Welcome back to the next talk. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Pro John McKinnon, who you have seen a few times today because he is also part of Sacred Earth Activism, but really he collaborates, and his talk will be about collaboration, entitled Weaving the Web, the Importance of Collaboration. And Crow is the director of Shamanic Voyages, a non-profit organization that offers travel programs and retreats to locations where shamanism is still relevant in the culture. And Shamanic Voyages also offers educational programs. Now, John is quite active with a number of other organizations, including, as I said, Sacred Earth Activism. You saw him today here a few times. The Shamans Directory, he's involved in Pachamama Alliance and in the Wabinaki Alliance, amongst a few others. So John is a real collaborator, and well, you will benefit hopefully from his experience. He has a long experience working with shamans in the Andes and the Peruvian Amazon, and has completed advanced training with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies and is a Hana Shamanic counselor. So we're really looking forward to talking to John. And if you want to add something, add it now. Otherwise, just please tell us a bit about your own journey, and especially how come that you're doing so much, really so much of sacred action, and what calls you to do that.
My story that will lead up to being called to sacred action and discovering the importance of collaboration started with a very private spiritual practice. I tried to find my place and find out what was comfortable over a long period of time. I experienced both edges from torture to bliss in that journey, and I eventually landed on shamanism and really tried to get involved in a really deeply personal and genuine level. I was a very private person, not really drawn to community very much. But one of the things that I did find was very rewarding was the sweat lodge. And sweat lodges generally work best in community. And that's where I first started to experience community. And it grew a bit from there. I eventually became very, very convinced the community was essential to my spiritual path. But the activism part of it came kind of organically, and it was interesting how there was one of those things that just pops up out of nowhere that changes everything. I'm signed up for Word of the Day, and on my phone or tablet or something, I'll get a new word, look at the definition, and hopefully improve my vocabulary. One day, the word slacktivism came up, and it talked about people who don't really get involved, but just kind of share on social media. And boy, that came home to me. I felt like I was pretty secure in how I felt and getting involved in things, but I really wasn't following through with the value of community that I had learned about in my spiritual life with my activism life. I hit the share button an awful lot. I followed people, but I remained kind of in the shadows, and it was being called out by that definition that got me active. And that's one of the people that I followed was Krista. Way back, there was a Facebook group called Shamanic Activism, I believe it was, which eventually came to an end because it just got to be too much to handle and too hard to moderate. And Sacred Earth Activism followed fairly shortly after that. And I took that opportunity to become in touch and take my activism to another level and take my collaboration to another level as well. The shamanic voyages trips that we do was part of my spiritual path and growth by sharing with other people what I found was really important to me, and bringing people to communities where shamanism was active and alive really was very important to me, and I wanted to share that with other people. And in time, the shamans that we worked with became more than just people we were visiting and learning from, but true collaborators. And I've really developed a lot of very important um, friendships and associations with people. And it's not just a matter of taking turns. It's a matter of really becoming partners in really important work. I think that, you know, this idea of collaboration, a lot of people, or at least I, didn't really understand it that well at the beginning, because I saw it as kind of cooperation or working for similar goals. But there is something different in collaboration that is really a true partnership where people do not, there's no chain of command. People really, truly are working together for common goals. And this conference is an excellent example of people collaborating. We are people from many different focuses that come together and really can change the trajectory of each other's path. And that trajectory can oftentimes bring us back together to work, you know, and bring our different skills to the fore. Yesterday, someone mentioned in their talk, no, I think it was in the chat, someone mentioned, am I doing enough? They clearly were inspired by what they were hearing, but they expressed a little frustration about feeling that they weren't doing enough. And I think that anybody who is genuinely on a spiritual path asks themselves that question. And my answer to that has been do a little bit more. And that's how I started to get into activism. I didn't have to suddenly be in the front of a march. I just had to do a little bit more than I had been doing. Being honest with yourself oftentimes will lead you to some self-examination and that very question. Doing a little more is the first next step. Yeah, no one's expected to save the world on their own.
No, absolutely. We're not. And I think that's where collaboration comes in. That's one of the angles, isn't it? And one of the beauties of collaboration. I heard you speak somewhere about collaboration. And of course, you mentioned that we also then, in a way, transcend competition. And I found that quite interesting because, of course, we have heard so much about the old paradigm, you know, and where we are. And competing is one of them. It's one of the ways they hold us in place, that we always have to compete against the other, no matter for what that is, you know, whether it's for the better job or the promotion, or whether it's in looks, or whether it's in being better at something, and so on. And I think that when I heard you there, it hit a point with me. I thought, yes, we're learning to collaboration, don't we? To work as a team and work together. Could you say a bit more about that? Because it's not always easy, is it?
No, it really isn't. And it was hard for me to I'm naturally a shy person.
Mm,
I try to make up for it by sometimes being full of bluster, but um, putting yourself out there is hard. And ego is not always a bad thing. You need ego to motivate you to accomplish what you can, but there are a lot of people who allow that ego to outpace um, its useful purpose. And I was really surprised when I started to work with shamans and other cultures that very oftentimes they would talk each other down. You know, like the guy up the river is a Brujo. You know, he's a sorcerer. He's not a good healer. Or even sometimes one type of healer would talk down another type of healer. And it's something that a lot of people do in their everyday life where they raise themselves up a little bit by pushing others down. But there is no place for that in spiritual pursuits. Um, uh, Getting on top of our egos is a very, very important part of growth because it's a gate that we need to we need to pass through or it'll hold us back.
mm,
Uh, and I feel like the whole idea of collaboration versus competition, it kind of you can follow it back to the myth of independence. Um, we in Western culture, particularly here in the United States, are taught from a very young age that personal accomplishment is very, very important.
mm,
And people like to take credit for what they do and be recognized for what they do. It's a natural thing to be recognized and respected and so forth. But um, that 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 sense of being fed by others it becomes very important to some people and actually can uh, can stop them from accomplishing what they really could by cooperating and collaborating with others. If if we can listen to someone speak without thinking about how we're going to respond to them, we're going to hear much more. And when the time comes that someone is generally interested in our opinions, I think that we are in a much better place to speak openly and honestly. The work that is necessary um, that we cannot do on our own, we really need to have the dedicated participation of others to accomplish.
yeah, I agree.
That's
I
it.
agree. I agree. And it is really interesting, isn't it? You work with groups, I work with groups, and how sometimes what a group creates is
Mhm.
so much bigger and fuller and more touching and more effective than what I alone could come up with. So it's not only collaboration that you collaborate as an individual with other organizations or with other groups, but it's also people collaborating together now.
Absolutely. The sum is greater. No, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
The group
Absolutely.
dynamic can become something altogether
Mm,
greater. Yeah.
mm,
Um, I when I was obviously I haven't prepared a lot for the talk. I kind of want to just speak conversationally, but one of the things that I was thinking about discussing a little bit was the uh, the role of spider woman and in a lot of indigenous mythology and cultural. Um, Spider Woman is the one who brought the gift of weaving to the people, and she was also the weaver of tales. And the whole concept of a fabric that it has connections, that's being made up of many different things, has a lot of social importance, particularly to the Navajo. Um, and the image of the Spider Woman and the medicine that she represents is very, very important to me in working with groups, because um, it's the that weave, that fabric that is created from disparate parts, it can be a very, very beautiful and powerful thing. Um, to to follow the stories where Spider Woman plays a part, she always has a great role to play in the act of creation and making connections, and really bringing uh, strength to the culture of a people by joining uh, different things together. And working with groups of people, it's very much like that. As you know, when you're working with a group, you never know what that makeup is going to be until everybody is in one room. And very oftentimes they're very different sorts of people. And one way of doing things is not going to work with every group. So to step beyond being in charge and you know moving with that dynamic that develops through the collaboration of everyone's participation can be a really beautiful thing.
Mm,
You cannot orchestrate it. You can't write it from the beginning.
mm,
It's something that takes on its own life.
mm, absolutely. And I mean, we talked about it often, and it came through here, didn't it, through the different talks. Uh, Nobody spelled it out, but you are spelling it out now. Collaboration is the way to go, because if we want a different paradigm, we need to get off the idea me, myself, and I.
Mhm.
And um, it was very much pushed in America for marketing reasons to start as the individualism, and that the individual is everything. And partly also, of course, to as an anti-move against people who joined together and demanded something, which like the labor movements and so on. But so we need to come back to the we, aren't we?
Mhm.
And you gave one reason already. You said because we can achieve more, we can achieve things. Yeah, not achieve more, but achieve things we can't achieve by ourselves. And you
It's
collaborate with quite a few organizations,
mhm.
and it feels to me almost as if all these strands come together in something then that creates the whole you. Is that so? So without the collaboration, you wouldn't be as multifaceted. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Again, if we picture weaves or threads in a weave, I have a very clear vision, personal vision of my spiritual path and what I want to do. Um, and when look at other people's visions and don't compare them to mine, but I see the beauty in their vision, and I weave it together with mine. I can collaborate with them and not change their vision. I can just uh, bring something of myself to them, helping them achieve theirs. Because I certainly know I'm not going to achieve mine on my own either. But by the weaving together of visions, um, we create a beautiful fabric. Um,
Mm,
the uh, the Shaman's Directory, for instance, when I first heard of the idea of someone floating to do this project, I immediately saw not myself, but I immediately recognized um, the beauty in their vision. It wasn't my vision, but I supported it completely. So I immediately got in touch with them and asked them if there was any way that I could help them um, get started. And I didn't play a huge role, but I had a consistent presence there. I enjoy working with the other people who are in that organization. And the purpose of that organization is solely to have a metaphorical fire that many people are invited to gather around from different cultures. So the people who are listed on the directory are well vetted to make sure they're not just people who read a book and decided that they're suddenly a shaman of one kind or another. But people who have been either trained in a lineage or in a recognized school, and um, and they're reaching into as many different cultures as possible because they really want to have a global um, presence of a gathering for uplifting this type of healing, this type of spiritual path. The Wabanaki Alliance is something that I'm connected to locally. The Wabanaki are a confederation of local tribes in the southern Maine area of the United States, who were once a very vibrant and very strong culture here, who suffered a 90% reduction in their population through contact with Europeans and dying of disease. Uh, the actual displacement and the political troubles and between the cultures were minor compared to being killed off by disease. But the people who survived were pushed out of the best territories inland away from the coast, but they persist. Their culture still survives, it's still intact, and they are learning to advocate for themselves within the government of the United States uh,
Mm,
while keeping tribal sovereignty. And to do that on their own would be very difficult. So they seek partners outside of their culture, and I answered the call for that as well, and
mm,
have been involved in letter writing to legislators and things like that when certain uh, bills come up. Uh, it's not a huge participation, but it is some participation, and I think that knowing that someone else is doing a good job and recognizing it is all well and good, but doing something to help them, I think, is very important, even if it's only a small financial donation or sharing a message in conversations outside of their normal reach. Uh, Jack Mazingiro, who spoke yesterday, has a credo he lives by, and that's great things are by small steps. Um,
yeah.
and, and that's very true. Um,
Mm,
and if we can actually participate in things that we feel are important works that other people are carrying on, even if it's only a little bit, we become collaborators. We may not have a large role, but we become collaborators. And I think that is so essential. You mentioned trade unions and things like that. If people didn't come together for common cause, we would be in a much worse state than we are.
of course, of course. And I love what you just said, because that's the beauty with collaboration, isn't it? We all think, oh, we need to do something. Or as when you started and you said, that person said, am I doing enough? And
Mhm.
we all have this idea that we do something big and something, and it's not. Because I mean, just the work, if somebody collaborates with Sacred Earth Activism, for example, and just takes over to do something, which it helps, doesn't it? And
That's
that's what collaboration should be about. We're feeding into something while enlarging it, while making it bigger also. But you said you have a personal vision, but I gather that you only collaborate with projects or organizations or what, who fit somehow into that.
Mhm.
You want to talk a bit more about that?
um, if I understand what you're referring to, I would love to use the Pachamama Alliance as an example of
Mm.
Sacred Earth Activism, we're all a little bit familiar with it, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But Don Perkins, our last speaker yesterday, was a co-founder of the Pachamama Alliance, and that's how I discovered it. Was from a reference he made to it at a previous conference, and they have a vision of collaboration as well. Bill and Lynn Twist, who are also co-founders of that organization, are working very closely with indigenous people in the Amazon to not only strengthen their voice in the Western world and the realities of governments and so forth that the indigenous people never were aware of before, but also they're helping them to find ways that are not disruptive to their own culture, but give them tools in the modern world. So developing, I'm trying to think of it's not the term I want to use, but micro businesses and so forth that fit in with traditional life ways. They also do tours, trips, kind of like what I do, but not exactly the same, where people will travel to the Amazon. Money is raised that way, but also they give people experiences that they will never forget, and make a really strong impression on those people as to how important not only the Amazon forest as an ecological entity is, but also the cultures that are part of that. Just in our last talk, when Jojo mentioned how people were intentionally written out of a definition of
Yeah.
the environment.
Yeah.
That is that it's ridiculous. People are and always have been part of the environment, and the idea that we're not is part of the reason that we are suffering some of the ecological troubles we have. So to bring it back around to working with Pachamama Alliance, part of what I'm doing in my vision is doing what I know is right in my heart. And I took a class with them called the Game Changer Intensive, and it was an 8-week course that opened my eyes. It told me a lot of things I already knew, but it told me an awful lot of things that I didn't know. The material was very even-handed. It wasn't just pointing out where the troubles are and who is responsible, but who is working to solve those issues, and there are a lot of messages of hope as well. So we're exposed to a lot of great thinkers and very effective activists around the world from all different organizations, and the collaborative nature of how this course is put together just really spoke to me. So now I have volunteered to be one of the moderators presenting this course to future classes. So it's become part of my vision because it's making me feel more authentic in my spiritual path moving forward. It's not just that I hold these ideals. I'm actually working towards something. I wrote down a note yesterday. Lighting sage and ringing bells is all well and good to set the stage, but to truly achieve anything requires work, and working alone is seldom as effective as working together. And that kind of sums it up. You know, our personal spiritual practices are very important, and we need to follow them, but we also have to bring that into a spiritual community in order to experience it in its fullness.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is where the whole weekend was kind of almost saying something like this, wasn't it? You need to dream, have the vision, but then take action.
Yes.
And I think this is something where you and I and many people who are active differ in a way from this idea that we can do it all up there through just visioning. It does take some action, and it can look overwhelming, can't it? What's out there and what we want to achieve on the long run and the web we want to weave. But if you collaborate together, it becomes quite manageable because you are in a group.
Mhm.
I think a group is very important. Would you agree?
Yes, it is so much more than us. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
again, the image of the fabric comes to mind. You know, we're all threads in the fabric. But the more of us, and particularly the more diverse we are, the more beautiful the design.
fabric will be. Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm. I know you have thought about it quite a bit, and as I said, I heard you speak about that subject at another conference. Is there anything else which we haven't touched for the last 5 minutes or so before we take questions?
Um, I don't really, I'm not a font of wisdom, that's for sure. So I'm not going to come and say anything profound, but I do want to say that this conference and others like it are very very uplifting. Just the fact that people come together. It is not the the Bob Hope show where everything's about Bob. Um, this is this is a collaborative effort that is addressing a need and filling a place for a lot of people that is difficult to find searching on your own. Uh, some of the speakers that we've heard tonight, we might run across accidentally in a search, but to be presented with a lot of different ideas in one forum, people are open to new things. And because we're all working for a common purpose, it, it, it brings us together and again creates a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's the beauty of collaboration.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody who's not only presented this weekend, but also everybody behind the scenes and everybody who's come here to take part as a listener.
Oh yeah, I mean, if nobody would come and take part, what for?
Yeah,
They are the most important part, really, if you think about it, because they collaborate on a different level now. Saying, okay, I'm interested, I'm willing to give my time on a Sunday afternoon, well, morning for you, um, to 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 sit here and listen and hope that something inspires me, or just to listen.
yeah,
And what we found over time, I don't know if you found that, the fruit of the work we all do is not instantly there. It sometimes takes a long time, and people come back and say, "Oh, I heard you there and there." Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, can we have some questions? Who has gathered questions? I should know that, shouldn't I? John, can I bring you in? Where are you? I can't see you anywhere. John, can you spotlight yourself? Ah, no, I found you. John, have you looked at some questions?
Yes, I've got some questions, Ran. I think Marie was gathering some questions as well, but I can kick us off.
Okay.
Um,
I'll bring Marie-Louise in as well.
Lovely. So
She's gone. Never mind.
I'll keep going. Hey, Crow, thank you for that. Really, yeah, some really useful ways, I think, of thinking about our role and the story we tell ourselves, right, about our role in action and in collective action. So thank you for that. I'm sure there's lots we could talk about. The first question I have here is from Kate, who's asking specifically around what you were saying about South American shamans and sorcerers. So this is a question from Kate. Do you see the concept of sorcery in South America as a product of competition or of a different cultural mindset, or both? So that kind of, yeah, I guess rivalry you were describing. How do you understand that?
Yeah, I think it has its roots in cultural differences or tribalism. The nowadays, most shamans, we'll call them shamans, they feel that they work, they do good work. But there is a long history of medicine people who would you could hire for curses, and for some people it was very deeply woven into their own tribal traditions to gain personal power by stealing the souls of others through violent acts. Um, I don't want to judge a culture, but in this day and age, there has been some evolution, even in the Amazon, away from that, just like Western society has evolved away from slavery. Um, Many of us have uh, parts of our past that we don't necessarily want to dwell on, but that sense of the other continues to this day. And there are that jealousy, I think, oftentimes is the result of either wanting to put the guy who's up the river in his place and keep his power down by by steering people away from him and toward you, um, or or the work that still remains to be done by certain shamans on their own egos. Uh, I won't name names, but I will say that I know of there's two particular shamans that I have in my head that I've worked with, and one would engage in that by calling the guy up the river a brujo, and this other one would not say a bad word about anyone other than to say that I'd rather not speak about him. um, those are two examples. I appreciate the second example. Um, uh, things things are complicated nowadays too because of the popularity of going to South America to either work with plant spirit medicine or simply to show up as a spiritual tourist. It has complicated things. Anywhere where there's poverty, you will find people who are motivated to feed their families by maybe presenting themselves as being something that they're not. So there are a lot of people who wear shaman hats that don't really have the pedigree. Uh, I I I don't know if that is more than answering the question or not.
I think so. I think you did it really well. Yeah, I think there's an interesting tension there, isn't there, in the kind of the growth of awareness and the growth of people feeling called by plant medicine and what that means commercially, financially, morally, ethically, um, and so on. I'm going to definitely pass to Marie for our next question.
Okay, this question is by Zabi, and it is, these days there's a lot of social anxiety amongst young people, depression, isolation. What are your thoughts in helping to change that and helping them to learn to collaborate more?
Yes, that's a sad fact of where we are right now, and I think part of that is splashing down into a technology uh, spike that is unprecedented. In just a generation, we've gone from children gathering together in groups to play outside to kids who are in the same room texting each other. It's very sad. It's not just the children. It's a lot of us have been caught up in that. I think each of us, to some degree, have been. It really takes an effort of will to engage with people on a personal level when there's so much competition. Uh, I'm trying to think. I forget her name. Our first speaker yesterday used a phrase that was excellent. There is so much competition out there mining for our attention.
Yeah.
And
And
our attention is one of the greatest spiritual tools we have. So somehow young people who have lost the ability to direct their attention in a useful or productive way really need to be given examples. And I'm afraid that that has to happen through the back door. Was it our last conference? I believe someone, not a conference, it was a Sacred Earth monthly meeting where someone who is in the Buddhist arm of Extinction Rebellion was talking about this image, or this it was almost like public theater of using a wand and changing people's cell phones into flowers or shells or something from nature. And that was a really powerful image for me, because you have people who are so drawn into technology, and all of a sudden they have something natural to contemplate suddenly in their hands. That's the way we have to reach our children, I think, is we have to reach them through the technology and let them know that there is a door leading back out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a case again of where you look at, there you go, and what you look at, there you go. So
Yeah.
if you never look at a flower, you don't know about a flower. It's
Mm.
just, and it's like, yeah, looking into the upcoming traffic and running and driving straight into it, sort of. It's a bit suicidal in a way.
Mm.
It's,
I'll jump back in. I have a question from Marie. So forgive me if that feels like I'm treading on your toes, Marie, as you're also here. So this is sort of connected, I guess, to some of this idea of finding ways for different groups of us to come together. Isn't the group also doing something for our neural system, for better or worse? But like with being in nature, we're not meant to be by ourselves all the time. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, that sense of that social connection as well as ecological connection
mhm.
is interesting.
I'll use a personal example. I don't know if I'm neurodivergent or not, but I've never been one to touch people a lot or be comfortable with other people touching me. But I do know the power of a hug. I'm not a hugger. Like, I don't walk up to people and hug them, naturally like my younger brother does, for instance. But I do know that to hug someone and allow that hug to continue for 20 seconds or so has a physiological effect where you release oxytocin and good things. Your brain is bathed in good chemicals, and the world is not black and white. There is a whole area of chemistry that oftentimes gets confused with spirituality. And it's not because they're different things or one is an imposter for the other. We are complex beings that are made up of both physical and spiritual aspects. And a hug does so much. And does that at all approach your question?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, it does. And I mean, I keep thinking about it because so many are just isolating themselves or insulating in a way. We have one more question there. If
Yeah, we have time for one more question.
Yeah, you talk about the importance of a vision. Could you share what your vision is? What is it you envisage? That's by Barbara.
Yes. Yeah, I spoke on this topic once, and I find it really fascinating. Personally, I'll use my vision for shamanic voyages. That's my avocation. It is something that's been brewing for a really long time, and I didn't have a really coherent vision before my first my first stay in the Amazon, and when I was there, I had so many epiphanies and I was, I can't even call it just the first time. My first time actually stretched into a number of months because I went back. But it changed me so deeply and so permanently that I just wanted to share that with other people. Even if I could only do a piece of it, it just yeah, it was a peak experience in my life, and I really felt like holding that to myself would cheapen it. I wanted to share it with others, so I formed Shamanic Voyages. It took a long time to come together, but now I invite people to have an experience that may produce something similar for them, and regardless, it's going to be a collaboration of people who are on a similar path, regardless of what the outcomes are going to be for them. But I know that just being there and holding the door open, and you know, walking down a path that has not been deeply trodden with others is that's my place. So that's my vision, if that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.